we go.
Now.
After you, young lady.
Okay, perfect. Well, if this is your first global marketing webinar with us, welcome. We've been running this series all year with topics that are relevant to marketing, communications, branding. And I've had the good fortune to be able to feature all members of the Global Chamber every month. So this is a spotlight on talent within our organization, which is even more special. Doug, I came to Doug with this idea earlier in the year because I really felt like there's such a wealth and depth of knowledge here among the Global Chamber. And I feel like there was an opportunity to talk about how we connect when it comes to marketing and communications specifically. So each month we've been tackling one topic. And this month I am very excited to have Tiziana with us. I will introduce her in a second. But what I just kind of want to ground us in the, I guess, the event description, so to speak, and why we're here today. But really what it comes down to is, marketing and selling online today means reaching people from all different cultures, backgrounds, experiences. We are literally reaching the globe. And being successful at that takes a lot of different components. It's about understanding values, behaviors, expectations that are shaping how people shop and buy and make decisions. So today we're going to talk about the cultural side of e-commerce and commerce. So this is a great conversation if you're just interested in learning more. You might also be thinking about expanding internationally or trying to connect with more diverse audiences. So I am going to turn it over to Tiziana. Tiziana, like you said, you are based in Spain, but you are Italian. So maybe you could just do a brief introduction into who you are as a human being, and then what we're going to talk about with you today. And I know you also have slides too.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Tiziana Bottone. I am a linguist. I have more than 10 years experience in translating, and also I do proofreading, copywriting, and SEO tasks. I mainly translate from English, Spanish, and Portuguese to Italian. And I specialize in marketing, fashion, and beauty.
Wonderful.
I'm also the founder of Translate with Style, which is marketing and translation agency based here in Spain. And I manage a multicultural team. I have people from all over the world.
Awesome. Before you get started, I'm just wondering if you could, obviously, you have such a unique background. I'm just curious, before you get into your presentation, was this always something that you were aware of, that you wanted to work in this kind of cross-cultural capacity?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's why I studied languages and literatures. I've always been passionate about cultures and other languages.
Mm-hmm. Good. Awesome. So you are the right person to be hosting this conversation today.
I hope so.
I will turn it over to you. Do you need help from anyone on the Global Chamber side for your slides?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to share the slides now. Just
Perfect.
please confirm if you can see it.
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's start this talk about how culture shapes e-commerce marketing. Okay. Okay, I already present myself. So let's start. Okay, so when we think about e-commerce, we often picture sleek websites where everything feels easy. We know exactly how to switch languages, where to find the card, and how to enter our credit card details when we are ready to buy. And that's because those websites are localized for our market. And when I say localization, I don't just mean translating words. I mean building cultural fluency, because without it, even the most polished campaign can fall flat. Culture shapes how people trust, how they buy, and what makes them feel at home in your store. That's what I want to explore with you today. On this slide, you see what I consider the real essentials of e-commerce localization. They might look simply, but together they are what make the difference between a site that feels foreign and one that feels familiar. Translating content is only the first step. You should always start by thinking about your ideal buyer, who they are, what they value, and what makes them feel comfortable. So based on that profile, you should tailor your tone of voice, deciding how formal or casual to be. Because, for example, the English pronoun you can be translated into Latin-based language in either a formal or informal way. And there are even languages that have three ways to translate you in masculine, feminine, and neutral way. So you need to decide what feels right for your audience. Then you also need to adapt imagery and product presentation to local cultural norms so that the experience feels relevant. And that can mean everything from the models and styling you use to the colors and to the way information is displayed in the website. Each of these elements plays a crucial role in localization, especially because some markets are more sensitive when it comes to inclusivity. In some countries, showing mixed families or what someone will call non-traditional families is welcome and even expected, while in other countries, it might not be perceived in the same way or in a positive way. The same applies to diversity in appearance. If all your models are light-skinned, blonde, and blue-eyed, and you're entering a market where that doesn't reflect local reality, your message risks feeling distant and out of touch. And customers won't see themselves in your brand, so they won't buy your brand. At the end of the day, it's about cultural adaptation. And cultural adaptation means making sure that the people and stories you show resonate with the audiences you want to reach. Then you also have to pay attention to the payment preferences, because these are never one size fits all. You should make sure your checkout reflects the methods customers already trust in that market, whether that's digital wallets, buy now, pay later, or more traditional options. If shoppers don't see their preferred method or they don't understand the cart, many will simply abandon it, and no matter how much they like the product. So adapting a payment to local expectations will secure the sale. Then beyond payments, you should also pay close attention to site charts, especially if you're working in fashion retail or e-commerce, because sites vary widely from one region to another. And if you don't adapt your chart to local standards, customers will be confused, orders won't fit, and returns will pile up. So by localizing site charts, you not only improve the shopping experience, but you also reduce return rates, and that directly saves money on your side. And what about customer service? Customer service also looks very different depending on the market. And this is something you should also adapt if you have an e-commerce. For example, in China, people expect to interact with brands through WeChat, while in Argentina, it's common to see a WhatsApp button right on the website, because that's the preferred channel by Argentinian people. So the lesson is simple. You should meet customers where they already are instead of forcing them into a support channel they don't naturally use. And finally, compliance and policies. One key milestone for e-commerce is the European Accessibility Act, which came into effect on the 28th of June 2025. This regulation requires online shops, apps, and digital services to be accessible to people with disabilities, covering everything from website navigation to product information. So it's not just about meeting legal obligations, it's about making sure every customer can shop with ease and independence. So if you plan to enter European market, you should take this carefully into account. Now that we've seen what e-commerce localization is, let's take a deeper look at why it's so important. One of the main reasons culturalization matters so much in e-commerce is trust. When you adapt your platform to local values and expectations, you show customers that you understand them. And that credibility makes people feel safe, respected, and more willing to buy from you. And the most important part, to repeat the process, to buy again and again. The same applies to the user experience. If you customize product selection, marketing messages, and the layout of the platform to match regional habits, the shopping journey feels natural instead of foreign. So customers shouldn't have to adjust to you. You should adjust to them. And when you do this well, you don't just avoid mistakes, you boost engagement and conversion. So by removing misunderstandings and cultural friction, you make it easier for people to connect with your brand, stay longer on your site, which is something that SEO experts really want to achieve, and complete the purchase. So in short, culturalization builds trust, trust drives engagement, and engagement translates directly into sales. But how does this connect to the bigger picture? And by bigger picture, I mean sales and profits. According to this study, by Nimdzi Insights, which is a research and consulting firm that specializes in the language services and localization industry, they found out that 9 out of 10 consumers are more likely to engage with the product in their own language. And 70% actively choose their native language over English when given the option. Even more telling, a majority will abandon a site if their language isn't available. And if they found that the website has a low quality translation, they will lose trust in the brand. So, in fact, when users expect better language, they're more likely to leave. According to this study, 13% said they exit very often for this reason. 22% they exit often, and 40% sometimes. Once you lose that visitors, it's very difficult to win them back. So building on what I was just saying, translation is only the first step in the localization process. You should define your tone of voice based on your buyer persona. When you do that, we can't just think about what sounds good to us. We have to think about who we are actually talking to. Because most online purchases today are made by people between 25 and 40, while Gen Z is quickly becoming the dominant online shopper. They rely heavily on social media, and in markets with younger populations and high screen time, the influence is even stronger. So that means that the tone of voice of your brand must be shaped around these buyer personas. If our words don't sound like they belong in their world, we lose credibility. So defining tone of voice around the customer ensures we are not just speaking, we are being heard. So now that you know the theory, let's look at some epic fails. Last August, Swatch released a marketing campaign in Asia where in one of the visuals, an Asian model made the slanted eyes gesture, which many people immediately recognized as racist. Within days, Swatch pulled the campaign and issued a public apology, writing both in English and in Chinese language in their social media channels. So as you can imagine, this wasn't a product failure nor a pricing mistake. What failed here was trust. So a single cultural misread cost the brand its credibility overnight. And that credibility had real business weight because Swatch depends heavily on China, having around 27% of its total sales come from China, Hong Kong, and Macau. So suddenly alienating that market isn't just embarrassing, it's financially dangerous. So what this shows is that cultural missteps don't just hurt your image, your brand image, they strike at your market. Trust is exceedingly fragile in today's digital world, and once it fractures, building it back is low, expensive, and sometimes even impossible. And this is not the only case. Swatch was not the only case. A few years ago, Dolce & Gabbana launched a series of videos in China called Eating with Chopsticks. In those videos, you can see a Chinese model trying to eat pizza, pasta, and cannoli, which is a typical Italian dessert, with chopsticks, while a male voice made sarcastic comments. But what Dolce & Gabbana thought was funny, it wasn't funny at all for Chinese people because Chinese audiences felt it disrespectful and that it reinforced stereotypes rather than celebrating Chinese culture. So the backlash was immediate and overwhelming. Also, celebrities, influencers cut ties with the brands, and major e-commerce platforms pulled DNG products. At the end of the day, their flagship fashion show in Shanghai was canceled at the very last minute. So for Dolce & Gabbana, the fallout was long-lasting. The brand was effectively shut out of China's luxury market for years, and only recently they have been able to enter slowly into the Chinese market and rebuild its presence in the Asian market. But I recently found out that the consequences went beyond the brand because the model in the video later said she had felt uncomfortable during the shoot, and the controversy damaged her reputation too. So many Asian brands stopped working with her. And the lesson here is simple. Intention isn't enough. You may intend to be funny or creative, but what really matters is how your audience perceive that message. Without cultural insight, even a beautiful produced campaign can destroy years of brand building in a matter of days. Now that we've seen the fails, let's look at the success story. What do you do if you're the global leader in selling hamburgers and you want to expand into a country where a large part of the population doesn't eat beef or even meat at all? So this was the challenge McDonald's faced when entering India. This is a great example of effective localization. If you go to the McDonald's India website, the first thing you'll notice on the homepage is that vegetarian and vegan options are given priority. It's not hidden in a separate menu, it's front and center. And that was made on purpose. because McDonald's understood that in a predominantly vegetarian society, they couldn't simply copy and paste their American message. So they redesigned their menu almost from scratch. So you won't find beef. They have more chicken and fish, more vegetables, and recipes are adapted to local taste. And they even adapted their supply chain to ensure there was no cross contamination. And they show that they respect culture and religion in India. India is often described as a single market, but in reality, it's a mosaic. I'm talking about India because I took the NIMSI study as a reference, but I could also talk about Europe because sometimes even Europe is considered just like, one country, but we are obviously more than one country. We speak more languages, we have different religion, etc. But India is home to 122 languages. 22 of them officially recognized, and they have countless ethnic groups. So urban and rural populations don't just live differently, they also shop differently, and they have different expectations and behavior. So major cities like New Delhi and Mumbai can be approached in the same way because each has its own identity, rhythms, and consumer culture. That's why here the real question isn't how do we enter India, but the better question is which India are we entering? So the answer could be a metropolitan tech-savvy audience or a price-sensitive market in smaller towns. So success comes from defining that focus clearly and then crafting a go-to-market strategy that fits. And that means adapting language choices, tailoring the user experience, and doing the research to understand what makes that specific segment tick. So in India, like in Europe or in Africa, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. There are many Indias, and each one deserves its own strategy. Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened. Okay, can you see it? Can you see the slide? Okay, thank you for confirming me. Okay, and as I come to the end of this presentation, I can't avoid talking about AI because AI is part of our daily lives now, and even more if you work in marketing. AI is an incredible tool. I use it every day, and I know many of you do as well. It gives us speed, scale, and a quick first draft. It can handle large volumes of content and save enormous amounts of time. But what AI doesn't do automatically is understand context, nuances, and brand voice. And that's where the risk lies. If you rely on AI output without human review, you open the door to mistakes, or awkward phrasing, or cultural insensitivity. A single mistranslation can feel unprofessional, damage trust, or even offend people. That's why the best approach is not AI versus humans, but AI plus humans. So let AI handle the heavy lifting like drafts, terminology checks, repetitive content, and let linguists and cultural experts shape the final version. And I want to give you an example. Take the beauty industry. If you're selling lipsticks in an Arabic country, if you translate literally the word nude when referring to a lipstick, generally the AI will give you the translation of naked. And that could be really offensive and inappropriate in an Arabic country and in many others. So the solution is to choose culturally acceptable alternatives like neutral, beige, or skin tone. That may seem like a small detail, but it's exactly these nuances that determine whether a customer feels respected and understood. So it's not only about avoiding mistakes, it's also about protecting brand and protecting their reputation. So companies spend millions building a consistent voice and identity, and handing that over entirely to AI risks flattening or diluting what makes the brand unique. So the real power lies in combining the efficiency of AI with the insight and empathy of human experts. Okay, last but not least, we can't forget SEO because it's absolutely essential when building an e-commerce or retail website. And I'm going to show you a concrete example from Nike. On this slide, you see two screenshots. The one on the left is from Nike's Argentinian site, and the one on the right is from their Spanish site. At first glance, you think Argentina and Spain both speak the same language, Spanish, but Nike doesn't use the same word for a t-shirt. In Argentina, the product is listed as remera, while in Spain it's camiseta. Why is that? Because in Argentina, customers search for remera when they want to buy a t-shirt, while in Spain, they search for camiseta. And if Nike had used camiseta in Argentina, they would have missed traffic and confused shoppers. And to prove the point, I also asked some people here in Spain, in Spain, native speakers. I asked them what remera meant, and most of them didn't even know the word. So this is a clear example of why SEO isn't just about translation. You couldn't just translate your keywords in another language, and it's about adapting keywords to real search behavior. And even when two countries share the same language, their vocabulary and habits can be completely different. Okay, so we reached the end of this presentation. Thank you thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for inviting me, Meg. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Tiziana, for that presentation. I have a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to the group first and see if anyone has any questions just immediately after the presentation. Feel free to raise your hand or just come off mute. If I don't see any hands or questions, I will start asking mine. You're also, I'm just going to look in the chat to make sure I haven't missed any questions in the chat. You're also free to add your LinkedIn information, as some of you have done, or your questions in the chat. I think we have a question from Francis. Hello, Francis. The mic is yours, my friend.
Great session, and Tiziana, very informative. I'm thankful that you put this presentation together for us. In fact, would you mind sharing that presentation with us? I have my email
Yes.
connection.
Yes, sure, I would love to.
Me. So here's my question. You know, it's certainly a challenge, particularly when there's many sub-markets within a country. And it appears that we have to be very intentional before we enter a country. How would you suggest we approach that? You know, going into a specific, let's say we're talking about India, go into your highest market prospect first, let's say it's Mumbai, but wait to enter New Delhi or let's say some of the rural markets. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I would suggest to to be in touch with some local marketing expert, because even if you want to invest in SEO, for example, you should invest in local SEO in India, because the country is very it's a very vast country. So each reality has different different culture, as I said during the presentation. So yeah, basically my advice would be to always count on native and local experts.
How do you find them? What's your secret sauce?
Well, through LinkedIn, for example, or you
Okay.
can hire some agency, some marketing agency there.
Great. Thank you, Tiziana. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Any other questions from the group right now? Let me just check the chat real quick. Francis asked a question that was actually one of my questions. Is, how do you find local experts? And what's the best way to manage talent like that, Tiziana? Because I think you're also managing different cultures and people from around the world. Like, what best practices do you have if you're managing very virtual, very global teams like that?
Good question. Well, sometimes it's difficult to make jokes, to use humor, because you do not know how other people can interpret it, because humor is so cultural. It's something that each country perceive in a different way. And also we use emoji, because sometimes even when you read something, when you read an email, you can read with an angry voice, but maybe the other person didn't meant to be rude. It's just its way to express, because there are some cultures that are more direct. For example, when they give feedback, while in other country, being so direct, it's perceived as offensive, or it's too much.
Yeah.
So I try to be neutral. I try to be polite with everyone. And I try to, yes, to be neutral. Maybe I'm not so funny when I'm talking in English, but I prefer to stay neutral and politically correct, because I do not want to offend anyone.
Yeah, I think that's good advice too, because you don't know humor, especially you just don't know how it's heard, or people's experience with that. I think that's such a great point. My question is too, like, what sources of information, websites, maybe websites is probably the best example. If you want to start understanding the culture of a place, people, country, another place aside from where you live, where do you recommend looking for websites? What resources do you trust, and which ones you like? If you're just trying to learn a culture for the first time, where do you get your information?
Well, I think that you can't really learn a culture by books or TV, or by reading. I mean, to learn a culture, you have to be in a different place, where the culture is. I've been living in Spain for the last 12 years now. And at the beginning, I didn't understand Spanish culture, even if generally people think that Italian and Spanish people are similar, but there are a lot of differences. And it took me time to understand Spanish culture.
Yeah. So it sounds like you would benefit from always making sure you have people on the ground in that particular market, wherever you're trying to go in the world, make sure you do have local talent, boots on the ground in that particular place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. You answered a lot of my questions. I think your big point, I think your biggest point, overarching point, is that idea of customer trust. And your customers will trust you the more you create brands that speak to that particular culture. And I think that trust element seemed to be kind of like a through line that you're talking about. I'm curious if you've had any personal experiences where you've established that trust early with a client and how you went about that.
But you mean when we translate or we create create content in another language?
Yeah. That's a great example.
Okay. Well, our clients check internally everything that we write. They double check everything. So they have native speaker that can check our job.
Okay, so probably just making sure that there are a lot of checks and balances in the background that they're taking care of and that they don't have any reason to. Okay.
Yes, it's not a one person process.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people involved.
Yes, absolutely. My last question for you is, what's the most fun part of your job? I mean, you get to work between cultures all the time. I'm sure you have met a variety of people and heard lots of stories. I'm curious, just from your personal experience, what's the best part of working cross-culturally, and maybe what's the part that still is a challenge?
Okay. What I love the most about my job is that I could see a slogan and a copy that I created on magazines, and also around the city. And when I see that, I feel very proud because, I made that.
Yeah.
And I also enjoy a lot working with people from all over the world. For example, they tell me what they do in their daily life. What time they pick the kids at school, or what's the weather like. So it's quite it's fascinating me.
Yeah. Any other last questions from the group for Tiziana? Yes, Francis.
Going back to, I thought one resource that I thought I'd make a suggestion is go to your country's embassy in that country. They usually have a Department of Commerce or something similar that they could lead you to some reliable contacts or resources in the specific country you're looking at. So anyway, just a suggestion.
That's a great recommendation.
Thank you.
Tiziana, any other final thoughts then before we sign off?
Oh, yeah. Well, again, I would like to highlight that do not trust AI 100%, because AI has been created to always give you an answer.
Yeah.
Even if it is a fake one, even if it is a lie, it should answer always. And it also can have hallucinations. So please just do not trust AI 100%. Always hire human people to confirm that result.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. It really does need to be a balance between technology and AI, but in this line of work, especially what you're talking about, like you have to have humans and you have to have you have to have people who are in that particular market and in that country. So I think that's a really good point. Let me just pop over to the chat just to make sure I've answered any questions over there. So there's some recommendations here from, I think it's Kyle. Also, a good translation agency will have professional translators in their home country that can understand their cultures and proper word use. I think that's a great call. Tiziana, do you have any best practices for hiring translation services or agencies in other markets?
Well, we only hire native people.
Okay.
With a degree in translation or in foreign languages.
Okay, so do you ever use an agency then if you're trying to find talent in that particular country?
No. We internally find the talents.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so another great resource, obviously, translation agencies as well. Tiziana, thank you so much for being here. I think this was one of our best conversations. Obviously, I would love to be able, if you want, I want to make sure that they can get, everyone on the call can get in touch with you as well. So would you mind dropping your LinkedIn in the chat so that everyone can have your contact information? And if you're comfortable with it, we'd love to be able to share your deck with those who registered. So we will make sure the Global Chamber team can send that out to everyone as well. I want to just do a final reminder. We will have 2 more conversations this year, one in October and one in November. And October, let me just look at my calendar so everyone can, save the date. Our next Global Marketing Roundtable will be Friday, October 10th, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern. And we'll be sending out more information about that in the coming weeks. But as always, you are invited. I would love to see your faces and hear your voices. I got a thumbs up from Jim Cook. And I hope and from Doug. 2 thumbs up from Doug. Doug, any final thoughts before we close out this session?
Really great information, really thoughtful. Your marketing is an art. And a lot of it is asking the right questions and really thinking about what the options are. And I think Tiziana laid a lot of really great ideas out so we can be better at that. In terms of connecting with both Tiziana and you, I think we should definitely make sure that all that information is available in the chat, and maybe you want to do any follow-up regarding that right now to make sure that everybody knows that you're both available and you're available to help for sure. So, but thank you for, as you always do, lead a very intelligent, very valuable session.
Well, thank you, Doug. Thanks for creating the space for us to have these conversations. I just dropped my LinkedIn into the chat. I know Tiziana has dropped hers as well. I think if there's one granddaddy takeaway from this, Tiziana, I think it's that we need to leverage humans and human beings all the time. And I think this is a great example of finding human talent wherever you are in the world to help build marketing and sales strategy. Wherever you are and whatever it is, whether it's a product or a service, there are good people all over the world. So I think this was a wonderful reminder this week to highlight human ingenuity. So thank you for bringing back that very important lesson to us.
Thank you, Meg, for inviting me.
Of course. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you. Your presence is important, and I hope we see you next session on Friday, October 10th. Awesome. Bye, guys.
Great. Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.